A good afternoon to you, Ted Langdell. We are here with Lunch with Langdell, and today we are at home because we are going to be bringing you something different today. That difference is that we are getting coordinated here, and we're also going to do something that is a little bit out of the ordinary. Normally we have lunch live with some people, and we will be continuing that in the weeks ahead. And I'll tell you more about that at the end of the show, who we're going to be talking to in the next several weeks. But today I wanted to introduce you to a project that's underway up in the Yuba County Foothills. And this is something that is maybe news to you. There's an awful lot of food being grown up in the Yuba County Foothills. And it's very, very tasty food, organically grown in many cases, and it's not something that a lot of people know about. And that's why we're going to bring you a clip from a recent Yuba County Supervisors meeting. And this is where the people who have some of this food are trying to create a food hub. And that food hub would enable that food to be able to get to the Yuba-Sutter area and elsewhere. It'll help build the economy up in the Yuba County Foothills and down here in Yuba-Sutter in the urban area, but it'll also bring some more attention to what kinds of foods and cool stuff is happening here in Yuba-Sutter. So we're going to bring that to you right after I let you know a little bit about how some of our fuel is brought to us here. And that's because we actually have a cool coffee roaster in Yuba-Sutter. And that's Tim Styczynski and his wife and crew over at Bridge Coffee Company in Marysville and Yuba City. I guess I should turn my mic on. We're not quite accustomed to doing things from home just yet, at least in terms of live, but we'll get the hang of it. This is always a work in progress, and we are grateful that we're able to do this for you. So right now, we're going to go to a presentation at the Yuba County Board of Supervisors that happened back on February 8th. And it's with Stephen Damback of the Yuba County Foothill, or the Yuba Foothills Association. And he is working on the economic feasibility of a food hub in the northern Yuba County area, in the North Yuba Foothills. So let's hear from Stephen, and we'll come back and chat a little bit at the end. And I may go off and make some soup, and then we'll tell you a little bit about that right here on Lunch with Langdell on Yuba-Sutter.live.
So we're going to ask you to help us find some money to fund a feasibility study to build a local food hub up in the foothills. Doing our due diligence in preparation for this presentation, we visited a lot of stakeholders, including Michelle Downing at the pantry. And at one point she said to us, but we're a food hub. What are you guys thinking about? And in fact, what they do is a food hub. If you picture the circle, the spokes coming in is the food. They aggregate it, they store it, they intelligently plan what to do with it, and then they get it out. Inside the hub, there's cold storage, there's freezing space, there's ambient temperature space, forklifts and trucks, and intelligence and good intent. Throughout California in the recent years, and accelerating now, there is a proliferation of food hubs for sellable food. A good example is in Yuba County, where our own Lon Hatamiya is helping them build. Right now they're in the feasibility study phase, a hub, and they want our involvement in that. Basically, they want to expand and create a hub here to bring our produce there and to bring their produce out this way. So that's a big part of what a food hub is. But there's another aspect that does not currently exist in California. We live in the foothills. The foothills have a different geography. We don't have any large farms. We don't have capacity to have large processing facilities. What we have are really teeny farmers who cannot make it on their own. So I'll give you a few examples from these little pictures in front of you. Carolyn, she's the one with the sheep. In fact, she was supposed to be here this morning, but there's a difficult birth going on right now. She may come in time for public comment. Carolyn can produce milk. She's going to make some very good cheeses, and I can enjoy it because I have a herd share. But you guys can't because she can't sell it to you. That's a big loss on your part, I'll have to tell you, but even bigger for her because she cannot get the critical mass to be a viable business. Without access to a CDFA approved dairy, creamery, she can't make it. Now, the next figure to my right is Salvatore, the guy with the sausages. He has water buffalo, he's Neapolitan, he makes great mozzarella, but he can't afford a creamery either. I can enjoy his product, and you guys can't, and he can't be viable. We have other people with cows, with sheep, and with goats. Cumulatively, they could afford or they could support a creamery, but they can't build it. What we're looking to do is to build a food hub that is community-oriented, that actually in this circle looks out to the local farmers and producers and ranchers, and in the center is not just an aggregation point, but a processing point. He's making sausage from pigs that he and I raised together. I've really enjoyed it. Sorry you can't yet, but maybe we could with slaughterhouse facilities. The two figures on the bottom, that's Antonio and Britt. They raise great vegetables. As you know, if you farm at all, however good you are, there's going to be a good percentage that cannot be sold. It's just not pretty enough, but it can be eaten. Currently, we use it for our animals and for our compost, but it could go right to people, especially as our volume increases. But it doesn't make sense to drive it down to Michelle to push back out through her food hub. And the girl in the middle, she's from Yes Charter Academy, already, Yes is engaged with what we do as farming. They come out, they learn, they participate, and they actually buy a lot of our local food. What you're looking at is a community, but a community that cannot coalesce without a hub. It cannot stay viable without the hub. There's one picture that's not here, another woman with a family issue who's not here. So I'll tell you her story because she was going to tell it herself. It's Julie. Julie raises really premium rabbits in Loma Rica. She's got very shishi restaurants as her customers. During COVID, 3 different times they canceled large orders at the last minute. What are they going to do? But what is she going to do? On her scale, it's devastating. She's got animals she can't do anything with. If there were a food hub in place, there would be freezer space. So we can get you by for a while, a certified kitchen to make value-added products, intelligence and communication in the middle, either to try to sell to other restaurants, put on some specials, find other customers, or even do community events so people can be outside during COVID situations, which we do in our own faltering way. Some of you have been to these events in the past. Does such a food hub exist? Not in California, but it does exist in a couple of places in the US, especially in New England. In New England, they've mastered the art of small, local, community-oriented food hubs. And we want to study the feasibility of importing that model here. This is a standard view of what a food hub is. Basically, the stuff comes in, it can be processed there, it's stored there, aggregated, sold, and then it goes out. If we had a food hub up in, say, Oregon House, that area, it's actually too far to get all the way to YOLO Food Hub. So we would need an auxiliary spot, maybe Olivehurst, maybe Linda. And the good news there, to aggregate in a closer place, you may not know, but you've got some excellent small farmers in the valley. You don't see them much unless you go to the flea market or you go to, say, the Penn Valley Farmers Market, especially among the Hmong community and the Mexicans. There's some excellent small farmers who struggle every week to make it worthwhile. They do it the same reason we do it, because it's a way you want to live. What's special about my area up in the foothills? Well, I live there. That makes it special to me, and I'm very community oriented. But there are also some long standing businesses. Is Tommy here? Tom is the fifth or sixth generation of Richard's grass-fed beef. 6,000 acre operation in Oregon House, and they are leaders in the industry in managing land, managing the grasslands, the quality of the meat, and they have to drive 300 miles to have their animals slaughtered. So there is considerable interest, and Brenda has expressed that there's quite a bit of interest down here to create a slaughterhouse that's closer and that maybe even small guys like me and Salvatore can utilize. Off to the right is a bottle of wine and some in a glass. You may know that we're among the premium wine areas of the foothills. What you may not know is how special it is. Actually, more wine is sold in New York in pre-sales, because these guys are savvy, than is sold in Northern California. There's a link there. Very special wines, and people should come up and see them. Then there's a picture, Cafe Collage. I know some of you have been there. Very high quality, open over 20 years. And then there's a picture of me. I don't think it's very favorable, but that's what it is. I have a food hub. It's very small. I work with farmers who are very high quality. I don't work with any farmers that don't work with the soil and biodiversity. They have to be beyond organic to be part of what we do. And we have the customers for them. But I don't have a single farmer yet who can actually make their living just through farming. I'm not big enough. My storage isn't big enough. My capacity isn't big enough. But a couple of things to point out that we learned during COVID that are very germane to a community-oriented food hub is that during the height of COVID, when people didn't want to come down and go into a store, we had increased calls, especially for the wealthier of our neighbors, for delivery. We started delivering to Lake Wildwood because people didn't want to leave their houses. But during that time, we didn't see so many people without good disposable income. And as soon as it loosened up, people were coming out. We have a once a week open market because they wanted to be with each other and to be in socially distanceable space. We have a lot to learn about what will happen when there are difficulties, a continuing pandemic or supply chain breakdowns, other things that are going to go on. And then there's this adorable little girl with their new chicks at Yes Charter Academy. Yes needs to be not underestimated for the power that it brings to local food and to community building. This picture is a little fuzzy, but it's really important if you'll just give me a second. You see where the little dot is for Falaki Farms? It's like that big on the screen. That's 3 acres. That was our best farmer of all. He gave up 2 years ago farming, but for the last 3 years of his business, he grossed between $140,000 and $180,000 a year. That's a lot of money for a farmer, gross. But he couldn't make it because the cost of selling was too high. He couldn't get it to Sacramento or Nevada County on his own in his pickup truck without refrigeration at 4 o'clock in the morning because it's not so hot. If there had been a food hub, I'm sure he'd still be in business. And if we get one, we can get him back. But the other thing I want to point out on this map, you see the Oregon House Grocery and Deli, that's our downtown mall. Across from it is land, and there are about 400 acres of land like this in Oregon House and Dobbins. That's almost as deep as what you have in the valley. In some places as deep. 400 acres. Juan Jose is 3 acres. That's a lot of land. Could we produce food that would come down to Rideout Hospital or to feed into this, this network? Absolutely. Right behind Falaki Farms is a ditch that can carry water to feed the farms. You all are aware that in Central California, because of the drought and subsidence and salt, land is coming out of production. Food costs are going up, and land like this is at a premium. There is nowhere else in all of California that has this kind of land. Oregon House and Dobbins. It's a huge asset that hasn't been exploited since the late 19th century when people did farm here and brought their produce to Camptonville and Downeyville to the miners. So what would the feasibility study do? We need to understand our dynamic better in our small community to make our community system work. We have a great deal of poverty up there. We have isolation, lack of transportation, food insecurity. We have children who are obese at a high level in Yuba County. We have a problem with all the associated diseases. And we've seen what happened during COVID, what continues to happen during COVID, and need to understand how we can react in future to disruptions of any kind. And then the last thing we need to build is a relationship with the chamber. I know Marnie is here to bring money in from outside, because handing money to each other is good, but money coming in from outside is better, especially when they visit, they buy some gas, they build up downtown Marysville and those beautiful brick buildings, and we actually have some revenue coming from outside. We also have to understand the scale of revenue that would come to Yuba County from taxes, from the sale of what we do. And just to point one more time to Lon Hatamia, who's been mentoring us the whole time and is deeply engaged, to be sure that we're aligned with what you guys have just gone through in creating the economic plan. This is the most important slide of all. I'm not going to say anything about the blue zones because Steve's going to speak for himself. Marnie's here from the chamber. We have 2 people, Louise and Cheryl from Yes. The key thing I want to point out, well, the Camptonville Community Partnership, people you work with very well, they have already pledged to work with us to understand the socioeconomic impacts and find some solutions. It's the top 2 I want to talk about, and hold on to your hats in a way. Marymount University has a graduate program in entrepreneurship for social change. Their professor happens to live in Brownsville, loves the project, and has assigned them for a semester 20 students to study the food hubs in New England. That's 20 people for the whole semester to study what works, what doesn't work, how much it costs, who owns it, what are the bylaws for the nonprofits. They're going to dig into all that information, and their deliverable is not only that, but its applicability to the Yuba Foothills. I mean, it's an unprecedented gift. And to top it, we've connected with the people in New England who build the food hubs. The heart of it all is the University of Vermont, the Ag Extension. Their guru is Hans Estrin, who goes and confers with all the different food hubs. He's pledged himself for this project, if we can get it going, for 20 hours and virtually unlimited access to his interns and staff for both the Marymount people here and the consultant group we would like to bring in. Your hats are still on, probably, but for me, it's incredibly powerful. This slide just shows we need to study the distribution area. That's the bottom slide. How do we link in with other networks? And also, how big is our community? Are we talking about a community of a 5-mile diameter to help those farmers you saw in the first picture? Or do we go a little bit bigger? We need to understand that. But the important part of this slide is the top part. We're not going to produce a feasibility study, bind it really well, and put it on a shelf. The deliverable we propose is a fully created and vetted business plan, actionable. We don't know what it's going to look like yet. That's why there's a feasibility study. It could be that by the time this project is over and we want to work on it quickly, that we would have a grant written to the USDA or other grantors to actually fund the whole thing. There are people out there with money. Or perhaps we write it as a business plan for private investment. And again, we don't want to have them guess. We can actually write that plan. That has to be what we're doing. It has to be actionable. What's it going to cost? We've worked with Lon, of course, in California, with our friends in New England, with the USDA. When people ask for feasibility study money from $130,000 to $150,000 for a food hub, everybody considers that a fair number. We're doing something much more ambitious than the typical feasibility study because we need to have an actionable business plan at the end. But we have so many in-kind contributors that we want this as our budget to hire a consultant and to get to work. And that's it, gentlemen. I hope you will look at each other and say, this is reasonable. Let's see if we can find some money to help these guys out. And I'm at your beck and call for questions now or at any time.
Questions from the board?
Through the chair. One of the biggest costs is going to be initial land acquisition. Is there room with the land in the community center available? Is that something? That would be a big step into lowering the cost of your project.
It's a really important point, Andy. And in fact, when I talk about a complete business plan, it has to finish with where's it going to be, what's it going to cost, who's going to own it, where's the money going to come from, what is the economic benefit. Would the community center be an appropriate place? I think it would. There are 2 or 3 other places that actually could be quite feasible for it. It's premature to determine that. That's what the feasibility study has to state. But these are ideas that are important and need to keep feeding in as the project develops.
If you can get a commitment for land there, it's a big step toward making our decision easier.
I don't think I could do that before, Andy. First of all, there are a couple of other really spectacular places that could vie for it.
I understand, but loan me your checkbook.
I'm sorry?
Because I need to put some stuff on my truck, is what you're asking us. Okay, so it's just that amount of money that you're talking about is just not something we have.
Well, I'm not asking you to reach into your pocketbook right now, but to see if we can find funding together that could make it happen. And if you task me with speaking with the folks at the community center first, I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, that's a big step.
Through the chair.
Well, I've always been a huge fan of the Oregon House area. We've been going up there for various reasons for many years. Cafe Collage, Lake Francis, Bullard's Bar, and the little wineries. It's easily within reach of Marysville to kind of go to a different world. I'm not going to expand on this too much because you have some other presenters that are going to duplicate what I'm saying, but we really appreciate the area.
Thanks, Tom.
Through the chair, there's a few things about this project that really excite me. The agritourism, both bringing visitors from outside the county, as well as those of us who live in the valley who would love to come up to the foothills and enjoy wineries and amazing food. And then also the ability to create income, self-sufficient income for farmers in the foothills. And finally, to have that food available locally. So I think it's many great things that you're attempting to do. And I'm very supportive of it. I really am not sure the specifics of how the county might be able to help, but if the board is amenable, I would certainly request that staff investigate that and come back to us with some potential options of how we might be able to assist in this effort.
So do you have any other speakers that would like to make any comments, Stephen?
We do indeed. First, I forgot to introduce our eminent professor who's guiding the students down in Southern California to do our work for us. That's Professor Earl. And yes, I think there are 3 or 4 other folks that would like to speak on our behalf.
So let's go through that list. And we do have a full schedule, but I think it's important we hear a few minutes from each of those that would like to make a comment.
Thank you.
First person we have is Louise Miller.
Hello, my name is Louise Miller, and I'm the Principal Superintendent at Yuba Environmental Science Charter Academy. The acronym for our school is YES, and I'd like to talk a bit about YES Charter and how it relates to a food hub in the foothills. We have been delivering project-based environmental science education to K through 8 students for 14 years, and the school is located on 10 beautiful acres that has a garden, a greenhouse, a hen house, a pond, and a native plant trail. With COVID funds, we added shade structures with outdoor seating so that lessons could be moved outdoors. Each class has a year-long project that's based on an environmental science issue. For example, the second graders are guided by this question: how can a community feed itself sustainably? One of their projects this year is growing the herbs used in pizza sauce and making pizza. Another project is, and you saw a picture of it, is raising chickens and gathering eggs for the school cafeteria. They learned to cook omelets in their classroom. These second graders are learning firsthand how a community feeds itself sustainably. Middle school students are studying the issue of drought, wildfire, and forestry management. They are using the UC Extension Firewise curriculum, which they, by the way, piloted a few years ago, to do hands-on fire science investigations. One example, they have prepared the ground for a controlled burn that they will carry out later this year. Next year, the 8th graders will be able to attend the first year of YES High School. YES High School will be a college prep and career technical education school with 3 pathways. We've been working on this for 2 years, doing research and reaching out to employers. Forestry and natural resources, entrepreneurship, and visual arts and media. YES is dedicated to serving the community by providing our students with the skills to work in forest resilience projects and other local industries that pay a living wage. YES Charter has a farm to school program. Our farm to school director, Cheryl Hoke, will tell you more about the great things that she's able to do with our students in the garden, the greenhouse, the hen house, at food tastings, nutrition classes, and the like. Being part of a food hub is another way that YES wants to support our community. The YES Farm to School Coordinator and the YES Cafeteria Manager already work with Yuba County and other local farmers to serve as much locally grown produce as possible in our school meals. We would like to extend this opportunity to our community so that community members will have access to fresh, affordable, locally grown food. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
Next person we have is Cheryl Hoke.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Hoke, and I'm the farm to school coordinator. So I'm the chicken lady, the garden lady, all of those types of things. I've been blessed with this position because whenever I came into it, almost all of the salad bar that our children were eating was coming from Cisco, and it was taking weeks and weeks and weeks to come off of a truck. Whenever I started, and I was fortunate enough to meet Stephen, we actually worked out a great partnership whereby all of our fruits, all of our salad bar comes from either our greenhouse, our garden, or from our local farmers. A great deal of our produce also now, or fruits now also come from them as well. So what I get to do with having food readily available is to teach children how to take care of themselves. So the chickens arrived last Thursday. The second graders were so overjoyed. And so there's a whole chicken curriculum that we get to go through so children understand how to raise their own chickens and get their own eggs. We have a lot of nutrition education. So most students require 70 hours of nutrition education a year in the state of California. So having a food hub and having those kinds of foods for taste testing so the children really get to understand the foods that come from their region is hugely beneficial. And then let's talk about SEL, social emotional learning. So our children have been devoid of that for 2 years due to COVID. And so having them come back into school has been a challenge because they have been sitting at home. They haven't been getting to have the interaction with children as well as interaction being outdoors. So my job is to take the kids out for 30 minutes, at least once a week, sometimes twice. And it really helps break down behavioral issues. And I think that that's what's most important because we've got to get them back to a level playing field after the COVID crisis. But I think the Food Hub offers a great deal for students to learn more about their community, to be involved more in their community, and also for us to be able to outreach to the community, give some of the foods that we'll be able to produce through the Food Hub to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next person we have is Marnie Sanders.
Good morning, supervisors.
Good morning.
Just to comment on Cheryl, I thought I was the chicken lady, but we'll take that up later, Cheryl. I had the distinct pleasure of going on a tour last week with Stephen Danbeck and really getting an inside look at the foothills and all that the abundance that is there. And I'm just so impressed. I'm so impressed by the business owners there. I'm impressed by the people who live there. They're so passionate about what they do. And this idea of a food hub is really exciting for me. And, and the chamber is behind this because I really believe that this is going to support the businesses there and provide them the resources that they need to be thriving in the community. And it's only going to help us in attracting people to our community. We've been talking about tourism and attracting people to our area for years and years and years. And how can we do that? We have got this secret gem in the foothills, and I think we're missing out on some great opportunities. I mean, we can put together some great tour packages. I feel like I was on one last week, visiting a sheep farmer, having a taste of locally grown products. I had this beautiful kale salad at the Clover Cafe. I visited the Yes Academy, and they're doing some amazing things there. So, I realize it's a money thing, but I think it's worth, really taking a look at how our community can pull together and make this happen. I mean, we've seen time and time again when we work collaboratively, big things can happen. And I think this would be huge, a huge economic driver for our community and, with some investment in it. So I support, again, the chamber supports this idea. I'm just making sure I've covered everything I'd like to cover here. One other comment I would like to make is, in related to agritourism, is that we have missed opportunities. You've got the Sacramento Farm to Fork. We should be bringing people here, and they should be going on tours in the foothills. And I think this is something really simple that we can do. But then, having that food hub to again support those businesses, so we can be a strong, vibrant community that is open for tourism. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Next person we have is Steve Kroger.
Chairman Fletcher, members of the board, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Steve Kroger. I am the executive director of the Blue Zones Project Yuba-Sutter, which has been brought to our community by Adventist Health. What are we? We're a local community health and wellness initiative that is really in the infancy stages. So part of our effort over these next 6 months is going to be develop a community conversation around health and wellness and put together a blueprint that we'll implement over 4 years. And so it's not a flash in the pan. It's a long effort that we will undertake. One of the primary areas we will be looking at is food policy, because as we know, that's something that brings health to our bodies. Other Blue Zones communities have actually developed food hubs. So it intrigued me when Stephen asked about, is this something that interests Blue Zones? And I can honestly say it is something. That said, as part of that community conversation, it will be the community that decides ultimately if a food hub is right in the food policy realm. Is it aligned with Blue Zone values? Absolutely. And so it would not surprise me with a community advocate that you have in Stephen and Julian. And by the way, they have been they have been invited to participate in our upcoming conversations, as you will all be invited as well. We'll be targeting those meetings for the late March, early April timeframe. And should it come about that a food hub is one of the primary interests, we have we have national food policy experts who will come in and engage and be a part of that conversation. And so nothing's free. I would like to say that compliments to Adventist Health for taking initiative in trying to determine the best way that we can improve community health and wellness in the whole Yuba-Sutter region. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I think that wraps up the public speaking. One of the comments I want to make before we bring it back to the board, Stephen, what you've created can change a culture. It changes the foothills. It's a project that I know you and I have worked on and talked about for years. This has merit. It has substance. And most important that I've seen is it's not driven by the board or the county. It's driven by the public. You've been able to find the partners, find the group, create a concept, work together as a team and a partnership, and you're here today to ask for support. It doesn't get any better than that, in my opinion. You've done all the legwork. You're continuing to do all the work and the legwork. I think that is the role of government, to listen to special projects. This clearly for the upper foothills makes perfect sense to me. I drive it, I see it on a regular basis. The foothills struggles with who are we and where do we go? What you've been able to put together and what I've seen today, I love it. Makes a lot of sense. So from that perspective, thank you very much. Back to the board, what I would really like to do is have staff, primarily Mike Lee, thank you for doing that, Mike, is with just a head nod that Mike, work with the public. Let's see what we can create, what opportunities are out there. And I know there are some opportunities that we may be able to connect. So if that's appropriate in your minds, that's what I'd like to see.
Well, I'd like to add something to that. We had a farm to fork program going in the foothills for many years, and we need to take a look at that and see why it didn't take off, because there was some great food, great wine, and I finally found out when they match the wine to the food, it's so much better. But I think we need to look at the past. We need to look also at the availability for sites for this within the community itself, because you put together a community center working together. This shouldn't be a a problem to be able to get the land. And getting the land is a big step. So
I think we're in the right direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I hear that, see that, looks appropriate, wonderful. Mike, if you will connect with Stephen, and we'll have that discussion moving forward. Okay? Stephen, thank you very much for bringing that in today. And all the speakers. Thank you.
And you are watching Lunch with Langdell, and we're here on East 12th Street in Marysville, where the Marysville Fire Department is headed that way being eastbound out on Highway 20 towards, well, we're not sure where they're going. You are watching again, as I said, Lunch with Langdell, which is our new show here. And we hope that you have enjoyed what you've been able to see. We want to welcome some of our viewers that are new to the show here. I know Peyton and Letty Gonzalez. Let's see who else is there. Earlier we had Laura Kieber. We had a $25 contribution to help keep this sort of thing going from Charles Sharp, who is the proprietor of the, oh gosh, you know, you get a little older and sometimes the brain has this stuff stored up there, but it doesn't come out as quickly as you might want. But we want to bring what's happening in Yuba-Sutter to you, and that's why Yuba-Sutter.live exists on Facebook at facebook.com. Live streaming YS. We also have a YouTube channel, but you can also find where to go if you just can't remember all of that stuff. Just go to Yuba-Sutter.live, like you see there on the screen, Yuba-Sutter.live. You are watching Live with Langdell, and we bring this to you every Wednesday at lunchtime, right around noon. Sometimes we're a little later than noon, depends on some things that may happen when we're not watching or just trying to get things going on. In any case, and here goes an ambulance eastbound on East 12th Street, headed to help somebody here in Marysville or perhaps out in Hallwood. So what's coming up on Yuba-Sutter.live? Oh, I was going to talk to you about what we were eating for lunch. Well, I don't have the pictures that I took, but we basically took a can of Campbell's chicken pot pie soup and goosed it up with some pepper and some garlic powder, and what else did we put in there? There was a little bit of basil that we added at the last part of it. Heat it up for 3 minutes. It's really tasty. And then while that was cooking, we made some garlic toast. So that's Lunch with Langdell. And then we're also having a cup of coffee. This is El Salvador coffee from our fine friends over at Bridge Coffee Company. So, what are some of the things that are coming up on Yuba-Sutter.live? Well, we want to tell you about that. For one thing, we'll have another Yuba-Sutter.live coming up next Wednesday, and we're going to be talking to the folks that are putting the Bacchae Parade Festival together on March 5th. So, if you tune in next Wednesday, which is like, what is that, March 3rd, you'll be able to see more about what's going on with our Yuba-Sutter Bacchae Festival in Marysville. So that's the Bacchae Parade, which we annually stream. So we'll be streaming that on Saturday, March 5th, sometime right around 11 o'clock. It takes a little while for the parade entries to get from where they start up about 7th and D Streets down to where we see them at 2nd and C, coming up towards us in front of the reviewing stand from 1st Street. So we may start about 11:15, something like that, but we expect that we'll have some interviews and be able to take you inside the Bacchae Temple in Marysville and get a little bit of a tour from the people who are helping to coordinate that sort of thing. We'll also be talking about some of the other things that you can do that are related to Chinese history here in Marysville, and that would be the museum that's on C Street down basically between B and C Streets on the south side of the street next to our friends at the local spicery. So you can go check that out. There's also the Chinese school down there that you can learn more about. Judy Mann may be one of our guests, also Gordon Tom, and some of the other people that we've been in contact with that we are pulling together for the Bacchae Parade. So we'll be bringing you the Bacchae Parade from roughly 11:15, somewhere around there on Saturday, March 5th. It's also First Saturday in Marysville. So there's a lot of other stuff going on in conjunction with the fact that it is First Saturday. And we will be bringing you a number of other people in the weeks ahead on Yuba-Sutter.lives, live streaming with, I should say, our lunch with Langdell here, and let me kind of tell you who those people are going to be. So on Ash Wednesday, we're doing the Bacchae show, and then coming up on March 9th, we'll be talking with Bob Harlan, who is the executive director of the Yuba-Sutter United Way. They've got a number of cool things going on. We will be talking over in Yuba City, probably on Plumas Street, somewhere eating, with Crystal Martin, and she's the lady that handles all of the cool stuff that goes on Plumas Street with the Downtown Business Association over on Plumas Street in Yuba City. And then coming up on the 23rd, I know I've got something, but it doesn't seem to show up in my calendar yet, so we've got to go put that together. So that is Lunch with Langdell today. And again, we want to thank our fine sponsors who include the folks over at the Bridge Coffee Company. Bridge Coffee is roasted in Marysville on 3rd Street in a really cool building that will soon have the ability to be open for people to take a look inside, see what goes on with coffee roasting and tasting. But you can also go enjoy Bridge Coffee over on Clark Avenue, just south of where Warren's Market is, and what used to be the Texaco gas station, and then was called Clark Avenue Coffee for a while. Now it's Bridge Coffee Company, Clark Avenue, just north of the St. Isidore Catholic Church over there. So that is our Lunch with Langdell, our new show that you should be enjoying every Wednesday right here on Yuba-Sutter. I'm Ted Langdell. Have a good weekend.